There are a number of ethical issues raised in this instance. Most importantly, as you've alluded to as well, there is the respect for privacy, especially inside a private residence. There's also the issue of consent to enter property and record individuals. There's a particular context around what happened in this instance, so one would also consider the treatment of victims and people in distress. I read that there was the use of recording equipment and equipment that was hidden. That in itself is rather problematic. But one must also consider the purpose of the recording and whether that is actually in the public interest, because that is what a court would weigh. Is that invasion, there would be a kind of proportionality test. Is this in the public interest? Because one would normally treat, let's say, public officials differently from the way in which you would treat, let's say, a normal civilian or a member of the public. Lastly, there's the also, because the story also alludes to the monetization of that content, that also creates an ethical conundrum.
Well, Zoe, when exactly does filming a public interest story cross the line into violating someone's constitutional right to privacy?
Well, firstly, let's understand that, the issue of privacy is protected under Article 19 of our Constitution, and that the strongest protection applies there in this instance inside a person's home, and media reporting then becomes problematic where recording inside a private property is done without consent, or individuals are filmed during what I understand was a highly traumatic experience, and where this material exposes private details which serves no public interest. As I previously mentioned, because in the interest of freedom of expression, in the interest of the right of the public to know, there is that public interest test, a proportional test to consider whether this broadcast serves the public interest. And in this instance, I think, I don't want to proclaim myself because, this issue is before the court, but that is what the court will certainly decide on, whether it was in the public's interest for this information or this broadcast, or this footage to be taken and subsequently broadcast, and what the reasons were for that broadcast.
So how does the law in Namibia balance freedom of press with an individual's right to privacy and dignity?
Well, I think I've probably answered that question to some extent.
Yes, sure.
Because, the filming a public interest story crosses the line when the intrusion into private life becomes disproportionate to the public interest. You see, that is the difficult task of the courts, to decide what weighs more heavily, and on the basis of that they will make a decision and accord a fine, or I don't know what the final verdict will be, but it's that test, that proportionality test, that will ultimately play itself out in the courts.
So in the case where the complainant is alleging that a camera was hidden under a cloth while recording, if true, how serious would that be from an ethical standpoint?
Well, I think clearly the journalist or the person who was recording was aware that such conduct was not ethical, which was why the device was hidden. I think I read somewhere that the person attempted to seize the recording equipment and wasn't able to do so. But I mean, there are some serious ethical issues that have played itself out. In any instance, ethical journalism requires media houses to really weigh public interest against potential harm to individuals. There is that caveat, not to cause harm to individuals. So, a private home carries a strong expectation of privacy, and recording people in distress in whatever means after a supposed alleged assault raises additional concerns about dignity and harm. And all these things would have to be considered, again, by the courts.
So, Zoe, just in closing, media houses do have, obligations when they are filming vulnerable individuals. What advice would you give to media houses to ensure that they report responsibly while still serving the public interest?
Well, let's also acknowledge that the media plays a critical role of informing the public, but the media is guided by a very, very clear code of conduct. And it is available to anyone who's interested to download that, or alternatively contact the media ombudsman. But to answer your question, media houses should definitely adopt very clear safeguards when covering, such instances. They should, I think, avoid unnecessary identification of victims. I see in these reports that people's faces are blurred, certain elements are blurred, but there's still, the possibility of identifying someone's voice, body shape, etc. So it's a very, very difficult terrain. Also ensure that reporting does not compound harm, because if someone is already in suffering trauma, the last thing that the media house should do is to compound that harm. Treat individuals with dignity and sensitivity. But above all, I think there are very, very practical steps that media should include. It's to distinguish between filming in public space or filming inside people's private homes, because the terrain changes completely and privacy laws are then applied differently. As I said, avoid recording victims during moments of distress unless there is a real strong public interest. There are so many things, but I think this is a very interesting case, because reality TV shows, by their very nature, are contentious in terms of ethical, the ethical limits and parameters. So this is going to be a very interesting case to follow. It would be very interesting to see how the laws are applied and how the court expresses itself. And this should be a lesson, I think, to all media, to really hone in on the code of conduct and to apply it in the interest of the public. That is why it is there.